Hello everyone, myself Leosmita Burhagohai, a student of 4th professional year of BVAC and AH, Lakhimpur College of Veterinary Science, and today I am going to give a presentation on eclampsia. So let us start with the introduction of this condition. So eclampsia is a condition that occurs mostly in dogs and is acute and life-threatening in nature. It is caused due to hypocalcemia, that is serum calcium levels lower than 7 mg per dl, and it occurs in lactating bitches. It can occur within 40 days after whelping, and occasionally it does occur during late pregnancy or at the time of parturition. So there are quite a few synonyms of this condition. So the first synonym is purpural tetany. So here the word purpural means during the period of about 6 weeks after parturition, and tetany means intermittent muscular spasms due to the deficiency of calcium. So purpural tetany together means intermittent muscular spasms due to the deficiency of calcium during a period of about 6 weeks after parturition. The other synonym is purpural hypocalcemia. Here, purpural again means the same, that is during a period of about 6 weeks after parturition, and hypocalcemia means lower levels of blood calcium. So, purpural hypocalcemia means lower level of blood calcium during a period of about 6 weeks after parturition. And the third synonym is periparturient hypocalcemia. So the word periparturient here means few weeks prior or after parturition, and hypocalcemia means lower levels of blood calcium level. So periparturient hypocalcemia means lower levels of blood calcium few weeks prior or after parturition. Now, there are various causes that predispose this condition in dogs and cats. So, the most important of all is the toy and small breeds with large litter size are most commonly affected. Although this condition can occur in any breed with any litter size and at any time during lactation, but small breeds with larger litter are the most susceptible ones. So the incidence is seen the highest with first litter. Poor nutrition during pregnancy and lactation will also predispose to this condition. Use of oral calcium supplements during pregnancy is also a predisposing cause. This condition is seen most commonly 2 to 3 weeks after birth, although it can be seen as late as 6 weeks after birth, after giving birth, that is whelping. Now, as I've already mentioned, small dogs are most susceptible. Out of those breeds, Dachshund, Miniature Poodle, and Chihuahua have higher rates of occurrence than any other dog breeds. That suggests that these breeds may carry a genetic predisposition for this condition. Now, as I've already mentioned, this condition may be seen in the pregnancy stage as well, and this occurs where because the puppies in utero claim too much of the total supply of calcium, thus leaving the mother insufficiently compensated. So now let us come to the etiology. So as I have already mentioned, hypocalcemia is the cause of this condition, but hypocalcemia occurs due to excess loss of calcium in the milk compared to the dietary supply. So this imbalance in calcium metabolism occurs because the calcium immobilization from bone, that is resorption of calcium from bone into the serum pool, is insufficient to maintain the efflux of calcium leaving through the mammary glands. So one interesting fact in this condition is that the parathormone will be adequate, but the osteoblast and osteoclast pool is inadequate to maintain the calcium homeostasis. Although uncommon in queens, it does occur. It may occur during early lactation of the queen. Now, the pups of the affected bitches may not be usually affected, as the affected bitches usually produce milk with normal calcium level. So now let us come to the pathophysiology. So as we all know, calcium ion binds to the exterior surfaces of sodium channels. So the positive charge of this calcium ion alter the electrical state of the sodium channel protein. So as there will be hypocalcemia, there will be less stabilizing membrane bound calcium ions available. So this will alter the voltage level required to open the sodium channel. As a result, the nerve membranes become more permeable to sodium ions. That is, sodium channels will open by very little increase in the membrane potential. That is, the threshold potential will be lowered. As a result, it will require a stimulus of lesser magnitude to depolarize. Due to this reason, there will be spontaneous repetitive firing of motor nerve fibers, and it will result to tetany, that is intermittent muscular spasms, as I have already mentioned. So there are many clinical findings that are seen in this condition, and the most earliest clinical signs seen in this condition are panting and restlessness. So, as I have already explained the pathophysiology, it is evident that there will be neuromuscular excitability, and we will see signs like mild tremors, twitching, muscle spasm, gait changes, that is stiffness and ataxia. Along with neuromuscular excitability, we will also see behavioral changes such as aggression, whining, salivation, hypersensitivity to stimuli, and disorientation. So when the hypocalcemia levels are severe, we will see severe clinical signs. So we might see tremors, tetany, generalized seizure activity, and finally there will be coma and death of the animal. Along with the previously mentioned clinical signs, we may also observe tachycardia, hypothermia, polyuria, polydipsia, and vomiting. So when there will be prolonged seizure activity, it might lead to cerebral edema. When there is mild hypocalcemia, that is the serum calcium concentration is more than 7 mg per dl but below the normal reference range, it may contribute to ineffective myometrial contraction and slow the progression of labor without causing any other clinical signs. So as I have already mentioned that panting is the earliest clinical sign observed in this condition. So if there is heavy panting, this will lead to respiratory alkalosis. So respiratory alkalosis means that due to increased respiration, there will be increase in the blood pH level. So because of respiratory alkalosis, there will be binding of protein with serum calcium. So one important point here to be noted is that the physiologically available fraction is the ionized calcium, not the bound calcium. So because of respiratory alkalosis, there will be increased binding of protein with serum calcium. As a result, the ionized calcium will decrease in blood, which will exacerbate hypocalcemia. So as a result, what happens is, although the total serum calcium concentration suggests that the hypocalcemia levels are not so severe, but due to the lesser number of physiologically available fraction of ionized calcium, the hypocalcemia level will exacerbate. Since even if the total serum calcium concentration is there but the physiologically available fraction is less, so this will again exacerbate hypocalcemia, thus resulting in more severe clinical signs. So now let us come to the diagnosis. So, history and clinical signs are very important to diagnose in this condition. So, the diagnosis can be confirmed by confirmation of hypocalcemia. That is, the total serum calcium concentrations should be less than 7 milligram per dl in case of dogs and less than 6 milligram per dl in case of cats. The normal serum calcium concentration is 9.1 to 11.7 milligram per dl in case of dogs and 8.7 to 11.7 milligram per dl in case of cats. Along with hypocalcemia, we also observe prolongation of QT interval and ventricular premature contractions when we take an ECG. Prolongation of QT interval suggests that there is increased ventricular arrhythmias, that is, the heartbeat will be fast and chaotic. Along with hypocalcemia and prolongation of QT interval, we may also observe hypoglycemia and hypomagnesemia. So for the confirmation of these two, we need to perform blood and blood serum analysis respectively. So we also need to differentiate this condition with many other diseases, so with same clinical signs. So we need to differentiate it from rabies because clinical signs like salivation and nervous signs are common to both the disease. Now, a differential point between these two is that we will observe paralysis of throat, that is hydrophobia, in case of rabies, which is not seen in case of eclampsia. Now, in both epilepsy and meningoencephalitis, seizures will be common, and seizures are seen in case of eclampsia as well. But we can differentiate it from epilepsy because in epilepsy there will be recurrent convulsions that last not more than 5 to 10 minutes. And in meningoencephalitis, we will observe no hypocalcemia, which is the most important confirmatory diagnosis in case of eclampsia. We also need to differentiate it from hypoparathyroidism and intestinal malabsorption because hypocalcemia is a common factor in both these conditions as well, like in eclampsia, but we can differentiate it from hypoparathyroidism because there will be low serum parathyroid hormone, which is in case of hypoparathyroidism, which is adequate in case of eclampsia. And in case of intestinal malabsorption, there will be weight loss and diarrhea, which is not seen in case of eclampsia. And one important differential point of eclampsia is that eclampsia occurs only in lactating bitches, but all the other conditions can occur in any animals in any stage of life, unlike eclampsia. So let us move to the treatment. So for the treatment, we need to give slow IV administration of calcium source. So it is important to calculate the doses of calcium based on the elemental calcium because different products vary in the amount of calcium available in them. So the dose of elemental calcium that is required in this condition is 5 to 15 milligram per kg per hour. So if we use calcium gluconate 10% as a source of calcium, it contains 9.3 milligram per ml of elemental calcium in it, and the dose is 0.5 to 1.5 ml per kg per hour. And if we use calcium chloride 27% as a source of calcium, then it contains 27.2 mg per ml of elemental calcium, and the dose is 0.22 to 0.66 ml per kg per hour. One important point to note here is we use 10% calcium gluconate over calcium chloride because calcium chloride extravasation is caustic, and calcium gluconate extravasation is not caustic. So during the administration of calcium, it is important to monitor the heart rate by auscultation or by ECG, because if calcium administration of rapid is rapid, it may show signs of toxicity, that is bradycardia or shortening of QT interval. So it is very important to monitor the heart rate during the administration of calcium. So when there is arrhythmias, so we should immediately discontinue the administration of calcium, and when the heart rate is normal, we need to resume the administration. So once the animal is stable, the dose of calcium gluconate needed for the initial control of tetany should be diluted in an equal volume of 0.9% normal saline and should be given subcutaneously thrice daily to control the clinical signs. So if we use calcium chloride as a source of calcium, this cannot be given subcutaneously, as I have already mentioned that extravasation of calcium chloride is caustic. So if we choose that as a source of calcium, we need to give 5 to 15 milligram of elemental calcium per kg per hour, and it should be given in continued IV form, IV route. Now the aim of the treatment is to maintain the serum calcium concentration at mildly low to low normal concentrations, that is within a range of 9 to 9.5 milligram per dl. If the serum calcium level is less than 8 milligram per dl, this indicates that we need to increase the doses of parenteral calcium, whereas if the serum calcium level is more than 9 milligram per dl, it suggests that the doses of parenteral calcium should be reduced, because the rest will be compensated by oral supplement and body's own calcium regulatory mechanism at work. So the which may remain non-responsive even after the correction of hypocalcemia if it develops cerebral edema. So we need to treat cerebral edema as well as hypocalcemia if it is there. So to treat cerebral edema, we can give mannitol, that is a diuretic, which is used to treat cerebral edema at a dose rate of 1 to 2 ml per kg body weight. And to treat hypoglycemia, we can give 10% dextrose. So after the acute crisis is over, that is we are able to control the clinical signs, the elemental calcium should be given at a dose rate of 25 to 15 milligram per kg per day in 3 or 4 divided doses orally for the remainder period of lactation. Now, calcium carbonate is a good choice for oral calcium supplementation, because it has a high percentage of elemental calcium in it, and also it is easily available in drugstores. The dose of calcium can be gradually tapered in the later stage to avoid unnecessary therapy. Now, along with calcium supplementation, we also need to give vitamin D supplementation, because that increase calcium absorption from the intestine. So the dose of calcitrol is 0.03 to 0.06 microgram per kg per day. Now, we know that calcitrol has a rapid onset of action, that is 1 to 4 days, and it has a shorter half-life, that is less than 1 day. So sometimes there might be iatrogenic hypercalcemia due to overdoses. So iatrogenic hypercalcemia means hypercalcemia because of treatment. So this can be rapidly corrected by discontinuing the calcitrol therapy. Now, one important point to be noted during the treatment of eclampsia is that corticosteroids are contraindicated, because this lowers serum calcium level. So corticosteroids interfere with the intestinal calcium transport, and it increases urinary loss of calcium, thus aggravating hypercalcemia. So this is strictly contraindicated in the treatment of eclampsia. These are few of the calcium and vitamin D supplements available in the market. Steps for prevention of this condition is utmost important because the chances of recurrence in recovered dogs in subsequent whelping is often seen. So, with a dog with a history of eclampsia, it is advised not to let the puppies or kittens nurse for 12 to 24 hours, and during this period the puppies should be fed with a milk substitute or any other appropriate diet. So, feeding of high quality, nutritionally balanced and appropriate diet during pregnancy and lactation is utmost important to prevent eclampsia. So, if the puppies are less than 4 weeks of age, we need to supplement them with milk replacer. And if the puppies are more than 3 to 4 weeks of age, we need to give them solid food. Now, one important point is that oral calcium supplementation during gestation is not indicated because this may rather cause eclampsia rather than preventing it, because excessive calcium intake during pregnancy will cause downregulation of calcium. As a result, this will cause hypocalcemia when the calcium demand is high, as the body will not be able to back up with the normal calcium regulatory system. So, as I have mentioned that oral calcium administration during gestation is not recommended, but calcium administration during peak milk production is highly advised, as this is helpful in bitches with a history of puerperal hypocalcemia, as this will help in compensating the loss of calcium in milk. So, along with all the preventive steps mentioned, we should also warn the owner for recurrence of eclampsia and subsequent whelping, so that the owner is prepared in the next gestation by taking all the necessary preventive measures, so that he or she can avoid the recurrence of eclampsia in her pets. So these are the references from where I have taken all the information, and I have also mentioned the sites from where I have taken all the pictures I have attached in these slides. Thank you so much for listening.